Hey Kev, let's follow this trail over here. This looks like there might be something waiting down there.
All right. Hey, wait a minute. Do you hear that?
Yeah, I thought it was just me. What the heck is that?
I don't know what that is. Whoa, do you smell that too?
That's unbelievable. Hey, look.
What the?
Hey, look, those branches are moving over there.
What the heck is that?
Holy cow, is that what I think it is? Look at that thing.
Oh my God.
It's a freaking Sasquatch. Welcome to the Bigfoot Terror in the Woods Sightings and Encounters podcast. My name is W.J. Sheehan, author of the series of books Bigfoot Terror in the Woods Sightings and Encounters. Oodles of volumes, 1 through 12 initially, and damn near the complete set now of regional books are available in paperback, ebook, and Audible format. The only ones that aren't in Audible just yet are the Central, Northwest, and Canadian volumes of the audiobook of the regional series. So stay tuned for that. Go out, buy a couple of copies, and support the work we're doing here. And now, my brother and co-host, KJ Sheehan. Kev, how are you?
I'm doing all right. Will you get to it and record those books?
Well, I'm waiting on Bill, you know. And, there's all kinds of little... This is a big managerial thing here, you know. I'm dealing with different personalities, different peoples... You know, some people that like to imbibe, if you know what I mean. And, it is what it is. I can only control what I can do, you know.
But it's dry January. Did you tell them they're not supposed to drink in January?
Yeah, it is dry January, isn't it? And I have a half gallon of Jack Daniels in my kitchen. It's unopened, though, folks.
All right.
It's unopened.
So how'd you like those coyotes I sent you the howls of earlier?
I could hear those little buggers yapping in the back.
Oh, yeah, screaming and that.
Yeah, they're freaking wild little buggers.
They are wild little buggers.
Tell me something. Have you ever seen one of the coyotes dragging a cat around or a squirrel or something?
Only on video. Like a lot of people post them, you know, they see them on their Ring cameras.
Yeah.
Carrying a cat or something. And so they post it to tell people, like, bring your cat in at night, you know.
Yeah, well, people are stupid leaving their animals loose anyway, because even a large hawk, Paula, God rest her soul, saw a red tail pounce on a feral cat one day in the neighbor's yard.
Oh, yeah.
And this cat let out a scream, which I guess attracted Paula to look, and somehow it got away.
Whoa.
But probably died later from the impact and the puncture wounds. It was probably just adrenaline that got it out of there.
Yeah, who knows? But yeah, these coyotes, they're not always nocturnal either. So that's where people are misled, because I guess apparently coyotes are not nocturnal animals that naturally, but they've learned, you know, that the hunting's better at night. But so you can see them during the daytime too.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw a video once of a coyote with a small thorn in its mouth around the neck.
Yeah.
And this was not a tiny, tiny animal.
No, some of them are small, the coyotes, and I don't think it's just, you know, how old they are. Like, I just think there's some big ones and smaller ones too. But yeah. I've had one walk up on me, like, out here at the beach where I thought somebody was looking at me, you know, at about 5 o'clock in the afternoon in the summertime. Yeah. I was working in the driveway and I looked over my shoulder and it was like a big German Shepherd. But it wasn't a German Shepherd, you know.
Yeah, that's a good sized animal, a big German Shepherd.
I was like, hey, how you doing?
Yeah. And that is something that could attack.
Yeah, generally they don't bother people, but what's going on with them is coyotes. We're not going to do an episode on coyotes, but they are interesting, folks. If you're interested in them at all, that they've adapted tremendously to survive. So, like, they're genetically, as I understand it, a lone hunting animal, but they've adapted to be a pack hunting animal. So, typically they would get along on squirrels and mice and stuff like that by themselves. But as food gets scarcer wherever they are, like I see them on a little island here, and they don't swim off the island on a regular basis, I assure you.
Yeah.
And so they're hunting deer and whatever they can get their hands on, but they can't take a deer down, but, 10 of them can.
Right. It's like a wolf pack
Like
attacking.
a wolf pack, but coyotes aren't normally a pack animal.
Yeah, like you said, they're adapting.
Yep, exactly.
Wow. So,
Isn't that
Kevin,
nice? I saw one driving a little convertible the other day, too. It's a lot easier than hoofing it around.
yeah, look at the goatee on that cat, man. So, brother, what do we have in our cryptids in the news and other oddities segment?
Yeah, we're going to go to the news, Bill. A pretty recent article, and I'm going to post a video on our website, BigfootTerrorInTheWoods.com, under episodes, and we are under episode 283 today. And this is a video from the news down in Florida where there was a private jet coming back empty. So basically the flight attendant and the pilot and co-pilot from the Bahamas. And they're flying at high altitude. These little jets fly higher than the airliners. And they get a notification from, air traffic control that they have on radar 3 unidentified flying objects. You there,
Now,
Bill?
my understanding, generally Kevin and I don't talk about what Kev's going to speak about. In this case, I saw what he's talking about. And I heard the flight attendant saying that they were at 40 or 45,000.
Exactly.
And that's what an airline is usually at, about 30, 33, like that?
Yeah, maybe 27, 30,
Okay, yeah. So they're another 10K plus thousand.
Yeah, they can fly higher, and they use less fuel, when they're up that high. So they
Right.
get this call from air traffic control saying, hey, we got these 3 unidentified flying objects. Can you see them, to the pilots? And the pilots see all 3. And they call back to the flight attendant and say, hey, can you see these things out there? And she sees one of them and starts firing up her cell phone, a mobile phone camera, and shooting video of it for quite some time. And it's like, you saw it, Bill. It's like this glowing white ball that zips around, so it's going along with them, kind of seems to be higher than they are. And then it stops in the sky, and then it shoots to the right and shoots to the left, very irregular pattern. And then it turns green, like a glowing green, and it in the video, it's like energized looking.
Yeah. Now,
And that's what the flight attendant says too. When she's interviewed, she's like, it looked like it was kind of like energized, and it was moving erratically.
Yeah. Now, I have to give a plug and tell you the truth, as I have experienced it myself. First of all, folks, you may not be aware of it. I wrote a book called UFO Sightings and Encounters. It's available. In that book are several of my own UFO sightings here on Long Island and a bunch of others. If you haven't picked up a copy of that, you need to get it. Kev, that video that flight attendant took is exactly what I encountered a pair of over the 1 mile buoy in broad daylight at Shinnecock Inlet.
Wow.
Exactly.
And they were glowing?
It was 2 perfect spheres that had a very defined bright border to them. It looked like it was sizzling. That's the only word I can think of. There was nothing dropping from it, no smoke, but the border looked like it was buzzing or sizzling. And the interior looked like plasma. One was white, one was pale blue, and they would shrink and go completely out of sight and then blink back on and grow back to their original size back and forth, blue and white, two objects. They were over the 1 mile buoy, which is the setup for incoming fishing boats coming into Shinnecock. And I could see their reflection on the ocean's surface, so they were real.
Wow.
They don't reflect light on the... I went through my observer's checklist, Kev, and first thing I looked was for smoke.
Yeah.
Like, is this something burning? I looked at the ocean surface. I saw that the glow was occurring in and around the 1 mile buoy, so I knew the distance I was looking at. I would estimate at a mile, thinking about it again now, these things had to be at maximum diameter, maybe 50 to 75 feet in diameter. Incredible, incredible spectacle. And when it was going on, Paula was with me. The beach probably had 50 or 75 people on it. It was bright sunshine and blue skies. And there were people in bathing suits. I did my visual of the people around. I did not see one person, not one, looking at them or pointing to them. How does that happen? How does anything I just described to you happen?
Yeah.
And that's exactly what that woman was filming. As soon as I saw it, I said, that's what I saw. Now, these things weren't darting around. The two of them just appeared side by side at the same height. And I'd say they were no more than 200 feet off the ocean's surface, which, standing next to my Jeep at the time on the elevated parking field there, it's a small little overlook, I was probably 20 feet above the ocean's surface, and they weren't a whole heck of a lot higher than my line of sight looking straight out. So they were close to the surface of the ocean and doing what I just described to you. Bizarre, huh?
Unbelievable. Yeah, and this sighting, it lasted 45 minutes.
Yes.
So it wasn't like, a little bit of glare on the window or something like that,
Now, folks, when we talk about these things, I can speak from experience, which is why I give a lot of leeway to people I interview, because I know how bizarre these things can be and the effect they have on a human being. Like when you say, why didn't you take a picture? I'm going to tell you the God's honest truth. I stood there with Paula watching these things for maybe about 10 minutes.
Yep.
I felt something weird coming over me. I don't know how to describe it. It was otherworldly. At the time, I had a Canon Sure Shot 35 millimeter camera in my glove box 6 feet away from me. And I thought about it and didn't reach for it. About 2 minutes later, I said to Paula, let's get out of here. And we got in the car and drove away. While they were still there. I have no explanation for my actions, why I did that, why I didn't grab the camera, why I drove away in the middle of this. I have no explanation whatsoever. I'm just telling you what happened. So when people say, this bravado, this machismo about what to do and when to do it and how to do it, folks, you have no idea. There are things out there and powers that take over. They have an effect on the human being unlike anything you've experienced as a human being. And unless you are thrown into that arena for yourself, you have no idea what I'm talking about. And that's the bottom line.
Super creepy, man.
Super creepy.
I didn't know it was going to get super creepy, but it is super creepy.
You're talking to a guy that's into the creep because I've experienced the creep.
Yeah.
and I know what it is. So, like I said, Kev, when I'm interviewing people, I give people a lot of leeway.
Yeah.
And that's like me and Philip, two good old boys now. Philip has had a lot of really strange experiences with the Wendigo, creepy funeral parlor spirits, demons, witches. And these things are real, folks. Real as the skin on your body. And unless you experience them firsthand, you think we're all a crock of you-know-what. And that is the bottom line. Now, where did they go with this, Kev, after the video was taken? 45 minutes.
Yeah, so they talked to some of the experts in that and UFO experts in that, and they believe it's a UFO for sure. Who knows what it is? No one can say whether it's a government thing or something else, but it wasn't a plane, it wasn't a star, it wasn't a weather balloon,
Kev, why is it we like to lean on it's a secret government project? Why can't it be anything but that? Why is it always a secret government project? Or why can't you just admit there is stuff going on out there that we have no idea what it is?
And you mean stuff going on out there like an alien being from another planet, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, I think it's just, I'm not saying it's not that by any means, but it's, people lean on the most obvious explanation.
I get it, Kevin. You know my opinion about a lot of this stuff. It's all from the demonic realm.
Right.
So what is the problem that people have with recognizing angels and demons, good and bad, white and dark? Everything else in this world is yin and yang. You have opposites, right? And then the transition in between. Why is it so difficult for people to just stand up straight like a man or a woman and say this stuff is real? They just don't want to face the music and admit that there may be something going on out there that you need to use extreme caution being around or talking about it or engaging it.
Yeah.
And why do you think I always say at the end of the podcast, folks, always carry more gun than you think you're going to need? You know why? Because you're going to need it if you encounter one of these things. That's why.
No doubt.
You can't go out there with a freaking bean shooter and take down a 9-foot-tall monster that's coming for you.
So speaking of 9-foot-tall monsters, where are we going today, Bill?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, Kev. Now, folks, I have to tell you something. I've been sitting on this for probably a couple of years. I think I took this back, Kev, when Paula was really in the throes of being sick. And it is the only account to date from Nova Scotia that I am aware of or have been made aware of, and it is fascinating. So let me take you into this. Pay attention. There's a number of things going on here. And this gentleman was extremely credible when I interviewed him. So this following multifaceted grouping of sightings was shared with me by Chris Culligan, a resident of Nova Scotia. All of these come from a day when the witnesses knew nothing of the Bigfoot creature, referring to what they saw as a giant bear that walked on 2 legs. This is what Chris had to say. First of all, Bill, everything I will say to you from this point forward was seen by me in 1972 or overheard in conversations in the years, say, up to 74 or so. In 72, I was 11 years old, spending the summer in my grandmother's house in Annapolis, Nova Scotia. My grandfather had passed before I was born. He had been a hunter and a guide when alive. Many of the area's hunters stopped in to speak to and check up on my grandmother on an ongoing basis. I helped her with her chores, did a lot of exploring in the woods, and kept her company. Not many people were around in the area at the time, with one older man owning most of the property surrounding my grandmother, raising corn and hay in his fields. I should mention that cattle ranching was also a standard practice as well in the area. Annapolis at the time had 3 television stations, none of which had said anything about the reported Bigfoot sightings in the Pacific Northwest. So I, or should I say our community, knew nothing of the monster's reported existence. The valley also had many orchards, an abundant supply of small game for the picking, and the corn and hay fields that I already mentioned. My cousin, who was 16 at the time, so he was 5 years older than him, had come to spend a few days with me at Grandma's, the two of us standing out in the backyard one afternoon in July, looking out into the hills, specifically at some activity in a field about a half-mile away from where we stood. This field was more than likely 2 or 3 acres in size, sprawling down the visible slope of this hill. As we stood there watching what was 2 giant creatures and 2 smaller ones moving about within it. We had a perfect look at what was happening at a half mile, not a cloud in the sky and pristine visibility. The 2 giant creatures were black and walking on 2 legs with long swinging arms, while the 2 smaller ones were going up and down from crawling on 4 legs to walking on 2 back and forth. Excuse me. They were hurrying around like children or puppies playing, keeping up with the larger ones as they walked. Within a few minutes, they had reached the woods at the edge of the field and were gone. I asked my older cousin what they were, being the older of the 2 of us, as we stood there in complete silence watching them. And he said he didn't know, and that was that. A few weeks after seeing them, I was trail riding in an area adjoining this field on my Honda 50 mini trail. Several old wagon trails were running here and there that I knew like the back of my hand, having ridden in there extensively. And I was heading down one of them. Ahead of me, sitting right in the middle of the trail, I saw something bright white, about the size of a baseball. Excuse me. Sorry, I hit the pause to cough. And I stopped to look at it. It was a white stone, looking like something you would find on the beach. Nothing like it in the area. It was spotless. My Honda mini trail was off now, and I was standing about 15 feet away from it, holding this white rock in my hand and examining it, when I heard a crunch to my left. Turning my head immediately in response to hearing it, I saw a large black and gray creature, about 7 feet tall, extremely broad, that stepped behind a small cluster of trees, apparently to hide. The cluster not substantial enough to hide it, though. What I could see at that moment was the right shoulder, arm, and leg of this thing standing entirely still behind these 3 trees. At 11 years of age, I was not going to hang around for a split second more, and I moved quickly to my Mini, kick-starting it and flying out of there as fast as I possibly could. In keeping with many of the more modern-day sightings, at the time I did not say a word to anyone, not even my cousin, about this event. I had just seen up close one of the creatures we had seen in the field, which was only about a mile or less away from where this had transpired. On another occasion, many months later, while visiting my grandmother, one of the hunters had stopped by to visit, being a former friend of my granddad. I was hanging around just listening while he and my grandmother were talking. They were reminiscing about many things related to Grandpa, when this man, started to talk about him and Grandpa hearing a baby crying in the woods on several of their hunts together, never able to find the source of the crying. My grandma told him that the 2 of them had spoken about such a thing one night after something was crashing around on the house's front porch. I had been home with her one night when the same thing had occurred, with her telling me not to go out there, and that was it. As I recall, nothing was said about what was making the noise or even what she thought about it, which went on for about 15 minutes.
You there, Bill?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, we just lost you. I lost you.
I don't know why. You want me to keep going?
Yeah, keep going.
Okay. On another day that my dad and I were over visiting, a man who knew my father, seeing his car in the driveway, knocked on the door. When my dad answered and invited him in, he started going on that the most gigantic bear he had ever seen just walked across the road on 2 legs in front of him, heading into the older man's farm field just down the road. This old-timer was the man I mentioned earlier, who owned much of the farmland there. My dad grabbed his gun and headed out the door, going down to the farm. Remember that neither of them at the time knew anything about what had happened to me in the woods with the white rock many months earlier, or what my cousin and I had seen on the hillside. When my dad returned, he was alone. The other man had gone home. And as we now sat by the kitchen table, Grandma was making him a cup of coffee. He said to my grandmother that when they got to the older man's house, they told him why they were there and asked permission to go out into his field to look for this bear, as they called it. The old man, said my dad, told them that if you see it and shoot it, save a bullet for yourself, whatever that meant. My dad rolled his eyes as if the older man, he and my grandma knew why he had said that. Even then at my age, I was putting the pieces together about what was being said and not said in my presence when around the adults. They called this thing a big bear, or a bear that walks on 2 legs, not knowing what it was, but knowing that it was, if you understand me. He and my father were yet again talking about hunting and the like when this hunter brought up the subject of this giant bear creature. He said that he had seen it himself, emerging from the standing corn and crossing the road holding an armful of corn, passing right in front of him at a short distance. He described it as being over 8 feet tall and 1,000 pounds. He added that Grandpa used to tell him of hearing what he called Japanese soldiers talking in the woods on more than one occasion, unable to find the source of those speaking. Thinking back on all of these things, I always felt what I would call a heavy vibe when riding my mini trail in the forest. A feeling of being watched. And that was before I saw this thing when stopping to look at the white rock. At my grandmother's, we also had a few occasions when something was stomping around the porch, to which Grandma said, "Son, don't even think of going out there." I fully realize now what we were dealing with back then. But as I said, none of the townspeople knew anything about Bigfoot at the time, not even using the terminology. To them, it was some freak of nature type of bear. And one more thing comes to my mind, Bill, as we speak. The older man who had all of this property, in conversation one day, knew of me riding around on my mini bike many times on his properties with his position. And he had warned me to stay away from the abandoned outbuildings, of which there were a few dispersed in different fields that he had in the area. It was not him warning me not to play inside of them either, but instead warning me of something near to them without saying it. I still live there, and have for 61 years as we speak. And since that period of, say, 4 or 5 years, I have seen and heard of nothing except of a couple of reports in other areas, having seen nothing else for myself. Nova Scotia, Kevin.
Yeah, usually, hey, was that a bear? Now it's like it's a giant bear, but it's walking on two legs, and it's a Bigfoot.
Yeah, and what else do you call it when you don't know of what to call it? You know?
I like giant bear. That works.
Big hairy looking thing with fur and walking on hardly. You know, never saw
giant
anything.
bear is better in a lot of ways than hairy man, right?
Yeah, well, you're trying to describe whatever you think. And the crazy thing was, when I was interviewing this guy, he was so legit. I mean, just so legit about the conversation about everything and how things just rolled out. And the granddad had been a guide and telling me about the area. There was cattle ranching. Who thinks of cattle ranching in Nova Scotia? I mean, I don't know anything about Nova Scotia.
But a very rural place.
Yeah, and he was just laying it out to me. And he still lives there.
Yep.
And, you know, he had told me, you know, when I take these accounts down, I don't really write every jot and tittle. But once again, people see something because he's looking. So he's riding this mini trail down this trail in the woods that he's probably ridden 100 times, buzzing around. And he sees this pure white object laying in the middle of the trail in the woods, which immediately catches his eye. Like, what is this white thing laying out here on this trail?
Right.
And he pulls over, and here is this pure white, like quartz stone the size of a baseball laying in the middle of the trail. And he told me after the fact, he said, I thought to myself afterwards that the creature left the thing there hearing me buzzing around in the woods on the mini trail, and perhaps knowing or hoping I was going to come by that area. So he put it in the trail as like something I would scope out. And he was right. And the kid stopped. Now, what the ending may have been, other than what we heard, where he just jumped on and kick-started his mini and tore out of there, who knows? Maybe this thing was going to attack him.
Right.
It was like a plant, you know, to get him to stop, to look, you know.
Could be.
And it worked.
Definitely got him to stop.
Yeah, that's the...
I thought you were going to say maybe it, like, put it there to distract him, you know.
Well...
Like, don't look off in the trail. Here's this shiny thing.
Yeah, well, and if it did put it there, hoping to stop him, it shows a little bit of intelligence.
Oh,
or
yeah.
plotting or scheming, however you want to look at it. I mean, maybe I'm overstepping my thought process by saying that,
but
intelligence,
yeah.
Yeah, you know, let me put this here and see what happens to this human on this mini whatever, you know.
Yeah, it was also interesting, like, talking to the elders and them saying, like, you know, that they heard it and it sounded like Japanese or something, which is, you know, we always hear that, right? That it's like a gibberish, sounds Chinese or Russian.
Yes, and this has been reported many times.
Right.
And in many of the accounts I have in the books.
Yeah.
And folks, by the way, I got 12 volumes to date, and I put a regional series together, which is 7 books. The written and ebook are done. 7 regional books. So if you have an area that you live in or you want to know what's going around you, we've got the Northeast, Southeast, Central, Pacific Northwest, Southwest, Northwest, and Canada.
Maybe you're looking to make vacation plans.
Yeah, to get your ass handed to you in the woods.
Where should I go? It's kind of like a Fodor's travel guide to Bigfoot.
Yeah, and on the cover it shows a Bigfoot carrying a small man over its shoulders, kicking and screaming.
With a map.
With a map.
And a regional Bigfoot book.
Yeah, he's got W.J. Sheehan's Bigfoot Sightings and Encounters in his left hand.
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
Perfect.
Crazy, huh, Kev?
And not carrying more gun than he thinks he's going to need.
No, who does?
Yeah,
Who really does?
true.
We were talking in the last episode about the two poor guys that died, I still can't shake that, I still can't shake it.
It's horrible.
And, folks, you got to be prepared. We learned in the Boy Scouts, always be prepared, right? And I always carry a little pocket knife with me. I keep backup for backup. Just anything is better than nothing. Are you ever going to need it? Maybe not. But if the time arises when you do need it, you'll be glad you have it. That's the bottom line, right, Kev?
Yeah, no doubt about it.
If you need a screwdriver and you don't have a toolbox, you are literally screwed. So, I got hammers, saws, tools. I rarely use them, but I can go down to the toolbox and grab what I need when I need it.
Oh, yeah. No doubt about it.
So, amazing. There you have it. So what do we have, Kevin, our listener mail today?
Yeah, we got some good listener mail. We're going to go first to Minnesota, to our friend Lee. She, I know we read a lot from people that have written in multiple times, but they just have some interesting input. So
yeah, and Lee is a staunch.
I know we're not playing favoritism here, but you'll see she's got some good input. She says, "Hello, boys, and Happy New Year. I've been listening to past episodes and just finished number 80, in which you commented on the Patterson-Gimlin film, or the Patty film. Mm-hmm. I just saw a video where a professional film and photograph restoration expert has gotten a first-generation copy of said film and is improving the quality. I'll include a link to the video. He shows how it has to be a real creature and comments on the visible musculature and the structure of the body. Mm-hmm. And when he gets to the close-up of the face, your jaws are going to hit the floor.
Yeah.
I hope this gets you to revisit the Patty film on your show. Have a great year. And we will... I have it on my to-do list, Lee, to revisit the Patty film, and this is some good stimulus to do that. And then she also says, P.S., Reamer, Minnesota, I think that's how you say it. I'm sorry if it's not. The home of Bigfoot has a Sasquatch Fest in July. You may recall that town from an episode of Finding Bigfoot. If I can make it up there, I'll give you some local color and reporting, and that would be greatly.
Fantastic. And folks, if you're new to the podcast and you don't know anything about me, I have studied myology, anatomy, physiology, and kinesiology, which is the study of movement. In other words, when you take a step, something happens. A lot of things happen. And it's being able to identify and isolate the various muscles and movements that are involved in any type of motion. Running, jogging, riding a bike, picking up a fork and eating, chewing on something. I have looked at that film extensively and closely, and everything that I can see that's supposed to happen happens muscularly with that creature. And you can see a lot of the muscles moving, which means they're attached to skin, which has hair on it, and that creature is alive when it was filmed. And that's the bottom line, Kev. I don't need somebody to tell me what I'm seeing and what I'm not seeing.
We got one more email, Bill, to cover, and it comes in from Cindy.
Now, Kev, I lost you there for a minute. There was like a flat spot for maybe 8 or 10 seconds.
Okay, sorry about that. We're having Skype problems tonight.
Okay,
folks.
Yeah, just so you know, folks, that little dead spot there, I hope you held through it because we had a little.
Through it. Otherwise, you're going to miss this, and that's not good. So this email comes in from Cindy, and a couple of weeks ago, we were talking about the California wildfires, and God bless all you folks that are out there. It's unbelievable. And we made some comments about why they weren't doing something in particular to fight the fire. And Cindy's writing in about it, and it's super. So she says, "Greetings to you, Bill and Kev. Long-time listener, first-time commenter here. You guys crack me up every week. WJ, are we the only ones left who remember El Kabong?" That was a blast from the past.
Oh, man. Now, you remember, Kev, El Kabong was Quick Straw McGraw in the era when Zorro was popular on TV. So, like the law-abiding good guy Spaniard put on the mask and the black hat and the cape, and he was an expert swordsman, and like a Robin Hood would go out trying to do good. But Quick Straw McGraw became El Kabong, and his weapon was that guitar.
So I got to look that up again because it's kind of ringing a bell. I remember Quick Draw McGraw. Easy
Right, he
for
was
me
a
to say.
horse.
But I don't remember the El Kabong. But I do remember someone hitting people over the head with a guitar, and
That was El Kabong.
yeah, not just John Belushi from Animal House. So I got to look it up though. But Cindy writes, that was a blast from the past, and she says, "I was born and raised here in Southern California on the coast, and I can address a couple of the musings you had about the wildfires. California has been in a drought on and off for the last decade, if not longer. And our reservoirs that feed homes and hydrants are at record lows. Firefighters in beach-adjacent areas, such as where I live, and in the current wildfire area, cannot use ocean water because salt water will corrode their very valuable and sensitive equipment. In addition, you'll never see water-dropping aircraft reload from the ocean for that same reason. Aircraft must sometimes fly far to find a reservoir to fill up, and that takes precious time away from them for firefighting and may have let the fire gain on them a little bit while they're away. The wind speed at the time of the fire started to reach 100 miles an hour in some places at times, and the fire is able to create its own weather in terms of the wind speed, letting it get a jump. At times, the wind spread the fire so far, there were many hydrants being used at once, adding to the shortage. And I had read about that too. So it's great input, where not only that, what Cindy mentioned, but I heard about where because the houses burned down, the pipes open up in the house, like there's no automatic stopper. So not only are a lot of firefighters drawing on the fire hydrants, but the houses themselves are leaking and using lots of water because they burned down, which is interesting.
Oh, boy, yeah.
Yeah, and then the last point I read about that Cindy didn't mention, which sounds a little dumb when people are losing their lives, but it is a point, is that they're worried about putting too much salt water on the ground too, because I guess it'll ruin the area for vegetation and that. But it seems like if you got to save people's lives, you got to do what you got to do.
Yeah, and it would do that. I mean, if you salt a field, that's old school, Old Testament.
Yeah.
Salt your enemy's field so they can never inhabit the area again.
Right.
If you can't grow food crops, you can't live.
Right. So that's it, Bill. Good stuff, good accounts. And folks, check out that link. I'm trying to post it, and for some reason, it won't let me post. But and I'll try it again after we get done recording, but look up, UFO sighting from private jet in Florida, and you'll see it on YouTube.
Excellent, Kev. Incisive report on the UFO sighting. A little input. Again, UFO Sightings Encounters, a book I put together. If you haven't gotten a copy, you need to go get one. A lot of really interesting UFO accounts in there, incredible UFO accounts. And I got to tell you, folks, whether you're in Nova Scotia Maine, Texas, wherever you are. If you're going out in the woods to camp, to hike, sightsee, photograph, fish, you best remember one thing, my friends. Always carry more gun than you think you're going to need. Sleep tight.